The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. These are the words of a Roman emperor who guided an empire through plague and war. How did ancient empires survive absolute collapse? By using a philosophy of mental strength. You will learn the precise Stoic strategies that transformed existential threats into opportunities for growth and stability. We will explore how principles like resilience, virtue, and accepting fate built an unshakable core in leaders and citizens alike. How did a simple shift in perspective turn certain defeat into enduring legacy? What does it take to build a mind that crisis cannot break? History shows that empires obsessed with wealth and territory often collapse from within. The Stoics offered a radical alternative. They argued that the only true foundation for lasting strength is not external power, but internal virtue. This was their central operating principle. For them, virtue alone was the sole good. Everything else, from money and fame to health and even life itself, was classified as a preferred or dispreferred indifferent. These external things have no inherent power to make you good or bad. Your character, your integrity, your moral purpose, that is the only thing that truly matters because it is the only thing entirely within your control. The Stoic teacher Epictetus, who began his life as a slave, put it with absolute clarity. He said that our opinions, our impulses, our desires, and our aversions are up to us. What is not up to us are our bodies, our possessions, our reputations, and our public offices. By focusing exclusively on what is up to us, we build an inner citadel that no external crisis can ever breach. Consider the trajectory of the later Roman Empire. Its gradual decay was not just a military or economic failure, it was a moral one, a society increasingly valuing spectacle and comfort over duty and justice. In stark contrast, leaders like Marcus Aurelius, who practiced Stoic virtue, guided Rome through plague and war not by seeking more wealth, but by embodying wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. His personal journal, now known as Meditations, was not a plan for conquest, but a relentless effort to check his own character, to ensure his actions were just and his mind was clear. Where in your own life are you chasing an external outcome, a certain job title or a level of wealth, while perhaps neglecting the internal quality of your effort and your integrity? This shift in focus from what you get to who you become is the very essence of Stoic power. In any crisis, the first step to effective action is knowing where to focus your energy. The Stoics called this the Dichotomy of Control, a simple yet profound mental sorting mechanism. It is the practice of dividing every single event and circumstance into two distinct categories: what is up to us and what is not. The philosopher Epictetus, whose words have guided countless leaders, laid it out with unflinching clarity. He stated that some things are within our power, while others are not. Within our power are our opinions, our aims, our desires, our aversions. Everything else, from our property to our reputation to our body, is not within our power. This is not a suggestion, it is a fundamental law of human agency. When you misplace your focus, when you pour your precious energy into fighting a storm you cannot stop, you are left exhausted and powerless to steer your own ship. The power of this principle lies in its ability to halt wasted effort. It forces a strategic retreat from battles you cannot win, freeing up all your resources for the one battle you can always fight, the battle for your own response. Consider the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius facing a massive rebellion. A key general, Avidius Cassius, had declared himself emperor and seized control of the vital eastern provinces. The news reached Marcus not as a rumor but as a confirmed report. He could not control the fact of the rebellion. He could not control the armies that had already switched allegiance. What was within his control was his reaction. Instead of raging against the betrayal or rushing into a poorly planned counterattack, he accepted the reality with a calm mind. He focused on what he could do, consolidating his loyal forces, carefully planning his campaign, and even securing the succession to prevent chaos should he fall in battle. By accepting the setback he could not change, he channeled all his energy into the strategic countermove he could execute. He was acting on the very Stoic idea that the obstacle is not the rebellion itself, but how he chose to perceive and respond to it. Think of a current worry in your own life, perhaps a project at work that feels overwhelming or a difficult conversation you are avoiding. Take a moment and mentally sort it. What elements are truly outside your control? The final outcome, the reactions of other people, the market conditions, and what elements remain firmly within your control? Your preparation, your effort, your attitude, the courage with which you speak. This simple act of categorization is not passive acceptance. It is the first and most critical move of a strategic mind. It is how you stop being a victim of circumstances and start becoming the architect of your response. What if the worst event of your life was actually a gift in a brutal disguise? This is the radical challenge of Amor Fati, the Stoic command to love your fate. It goes far beyond simple acceptance. It is an active, heartfelt embrace of everything that happens, especially the hardships. This is not about passive resignation where you just give up and let life wash over you. It is about looking directly at chaos, at loss, at failure, and saying yes to it. Why? Because that very event is now a thread in the fabric of your life. To reject it is to tear at the cloth itself. To love it is to take that thread and begin weaving something stronger and more beautiful. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself of this duty. He wrote that we should accept whatever happens to us, even if it seems disagreeable, because it leads to the health of the universe and the prosperity and happiness of the whole. He saw fate as a master weaver, and each event, good or bad, was a necessary part of a larger, perfect pattern. Your job is not to curse the dark thread, but to find its purpose in the grand design. This mindset fuels a unique form of resilience. When you stop fighting reality, you stop wasting energy. All that power you are using to complain, to wish things were different, is suddenly freed up. Now you can channel it into creative problem solving. Consider a city devastated by a powerful earthquake. The immediate reality is rubble and loss. A passive response would be despair. A reactive response might be a frantic, disorganized rebuild, but an Amor Fati response is different. It accepts the destruction completely without sugarcoating the pain. Then it asks, since this has happened, how can we use this blank slate? How can we build a city that is more resilient, more beautiful, and more connected than the one that stood before? The disaster becomes the very reason for a transformative leap forward. The obstacle, the crisis, becomes the way. Think back to a past difficulty in your own life, a setback you never would have chosen. What hidden benefit emerged from that struggle? Did it reveal a strength you did not know you had? Did it close one door only to force you onto a better path you would have been too afraid to take? Amor Fati invites you to reframe your entire history, not as a series of random misfortunes, but as the precise curriculum required to build the person you are today. Panic tightens its grip when we stare too long at a single point. The Stoics had a powerful mental tool to break this spell, a technique they called the view from above. It is the deliberate act of zooming out, of shifting your perspective from the intense close-up of your immediate crisis to a vantage point high above, until your entire life, your city, even your empire, appears as a small part of a vast, unfolding story. This was a favorite exercise of Marcus Aurelius. In his private writings, he constantly reminded himself to look at things from a higher plane. He would visualize the entire world, all the bustling cities and armies, all the joys and sorrows of millions as tiny specks on a single sphere. He would stretch his mind across time, picturing the endless procession of generations that had come before him and the countless more that would follow. From this cosmic perspective, his own troubles, even the weight of leading an empire through plague and war, shrank to their proper size. They were not insignificant, but they were part of a grand, eternal cycle. This is not about dismissing your problems. It is about seeing them in their true context. Imagine a general standing on a hilltop, looking down at the chaos of a raging battle. From the ground, the fight is a deafening, bloody confusion. But from the hill, the general sees the entire field. He sees the movements of his own units and the enemy's. He identifies weak points and opportunities invisible to the soldier in the fray. That elevated view is what allows for clear, strategic decisions. The Stoic view from above does the same for the battles in your mind. It pulls you out of the emotional trenches and gives you the general's calm overview. So take a current stress, that looming deadline or that personal conflict that feels all-consuming. Now perform the exercise. In your mind, fast forward 1 year. How much will this problem truly matter then? Now zoom out further to a century from now. From that distant future, looking back, your entire life, with all its triumphs and heartaches, will be a brief historical footnote. This does not make your efforts meaningless. It liberates them. It allows you to act not from a place of frantic fear, but from a place of purposeful calm, understanding that you are playing your part in a story far greater than yourself. The most prepared minds are never truly surprised by misfortune. They have already faced it in their thoughts. This is the core of the ancient Stoic practice known as Premeditatio Malorum, the premeditation of evils. Far from being a pessimistic exercise, it is a practical mental drill designed to fortify your emotional resilience. By consciously and regularly visualizing potential setbacks, you perform a kind of fire drill for the soul. You inoculate yourself against the paralyzing shock of adversity when it actually arrives. The Stoic philosopher Seneca put this into starkly practical terms. He advised his readers to regularly contemplate the possibility of exile, poverty, or even death. He argued that by doing so, you come to a profound realization. You see that these feared events are not the monstrous catastrophes you imagine, but are in fact manageable. You realize that you can endure them and that your character can remain intact. This practice serves a dual purpose. It not only steels you against future hardship, but it also dramatically increases your appreciation for the present. By mentally rehearsing the loss of what you have, you suddenly see your health, your relationships, and your comforts in a new, more grateful light. Consider a leader responsible for a vast ancient city. They know that a drought could sever their supply lines, leading to famine and civil unrest. A leader who practices negative visualization does not simply hope for the best. They spend time each week mentally walking through that very scenario. They picture the rivers running dry. They visualize the panic in the markets, and then, in their mind, they begin to work. They identify alternative trade routes overland. They calculate grain reserves and rationing plans. They mentally prepare the speeches they would give to keep the people calm. When a real drought eventually comes, this leader is not frozen by fear. The crisis feels familiar. They have a contingency plan ready, not because they are a prophet, but because they have already lived through the disaster in their mind. Their calm, prepared response saves countless lives. So take a moment and bring to mind a single outcome you fear, perhaps a professional failure or a personal rejection. Do not push it away, instead invite it in. Now mentally rehearse it, see the event unfold, and then, most importantly, watch yourself within that scenario. How would your best self, guided by reason and virtue, respond? What is the first practical step you would take? This is not inviting disaster. This is disarming fear by looking it directly in the eye and realizing you have the strength to meet it. While walls of stone can fall, the Stoics built a fortress within that no army could ever conquer. This was their concept of the inner citadel, an inviolable stronghold of mind and character. It is not a physical place, but a state of unshakable resilience constructed through the daily practice of Stoic principles we have explored. When chaos reigns outside, when everything you have built seems to be crumbling, this inner fortress remains standing. Marcus Aurelius referred to it constantly as his governing principle, the sacred core of his being. He wrote that you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. This inner citadel is where you retreat not to hide from the world, but to gather your strength and direct your response from a place of unwavering clarity. It is the source of true stability when all external supports are gone. History offers a profound example in the philosopher king himself, Marcus Aurelius, leading Rome through a devastating plague. As disease swept through the city, claiming countless lives and sowing terror, the emperor did not barricade himself in a palace. He continued his duties, meeting with officials, reviewing troops, and making decisions, all while maintaining his composure and judgment. His city was under a biological siege, but his inner citadel held firm. He did this by constantly returning to his core principles, accepting the reality of the plague without being ruled by the fear of it, and focusing exclusively on the duties he could still perform. His strength was not in avoiding the crisis, but in meeting it with a mind that crisis could not break. So what daily practice could you adopt to begin reinforcing your own inner walls against the sieges of modern anxiety? It might be as simple as a morning meditation on the dichotomy of control, mentally sorting what is yours to handle from what is not. Or it could be a nightly reflection, asking yourself where you succeeded in acting with virtue and where you allowed an external event to disturb your peace. Each small, conscious effort is like laying another stone in your defenses, building a sanctuary of calm that no outside storm can ever penetrate. A crisis does not build character so much as it reveals it. For a Stoic leader, that revealed character is measured by a single standard: service to the community. This is the discipline of action, the vital step that transforms inner resilience into outward benefit for all. The Stoics insisted that virtue is not a private meditation, it is a public performance. Your philosophical understanding means nothing if it does not translate into just and beneficial action for the collective. Marcus Aurelius wrote powerfully about this duty, reminding himself that he was born for the sake of others. He stated that his own mind and his own governing principle ought to be of service to the community, just as the hand or the foot, if they had reason, would direct their every movement in service to the whole body. Your actions, in other words, are the limbs of your philosophy. They must move with purpose for the common welfare. Consider the very plague that tested Marcus Aurelius's inner citadel. As emperor, he held the power to commandeer scarce medical supplies and food for the imperial court, to secure his own safety and that of his family. Yet his writings and his actions show a man relentlessly focused on his duty to his fellow citizens. He worked to ensure the fair distribution of resources, organized relief efforts, and continued administering justice even as death surrounded the city. He chose the harder path of justice over the easier path of personal gain, because his Stoic principles dictated that his role existed for the benefit of the people, not the other way around. His strength was not just in enduring the crisis, but in directing that endurance toward the service of others. Where in your own life can you translate your principles into action? This week, identify one small, selfless act you can perform for your family or your wider community. It does not need to be grand. It could be a quiet task no one will ever thank you for, or a moment of patience offered when it is difficult to give. The goal is to practice aligning your actions with the Stoic ideal of the common good, building a character that a crisis would reveal as genuinely strong and truly for others. That narrow gap between a shocking event and your raw response is where empires are saved or lost. In the heat of crisis, a single unchecked emotion can trigger a cascade of disastrous decisions. The Stoics identified this critical moment and developed a powerful technique to master it, a deliberate pause between the initial impression and your final reaction. They called this the role of proherses, your faculty of choice. This is your inner gatekeeper, the part of you that has the ultimate power to either assent to a destructive impulse or to firmly reject it. It is not the bad news itself that harms you, but your immediate, unquestioned judgment about that news. Epictetus, the philosopher who turned his own suffering into profound wisdom, laid out this truth with stunning clarity. He taught that men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them. An event is just an event. Your judgment about that event is what assigns it power, transforming a simple setback into a catastrophic failure in your mind. Picture a seasoned commander in the field, receiving a dispatch that a key ally has suddenly withdrawn their support. The initial impression is one of betrayal and imminent defeat. The raw, emotional impulse might be to rage at the messenger, to issue a reckless order for immediate retaliation, to give in to despair. But a Stoic commander trained in this discipline does none of these things. Instead, they take a deliberate physical breath. In that brief pause, they engage their proherses. They examine the impression. Is this truly a catastrophe, or is it a new set of circumstances to be managed? They withhold their assent from the initial panic and choose a different judgment. The situation is difficult, not hopeless. This setback demands a new strategy, not a surrender to anger. From that place of chosen calm, they can then assess their remaining forces, communicate with clarity, and plot a rational course forward. That single moment of pause prevented a tactical problem from becoming a total collapse. Think back to a recent time in your own life when you reacted impulsively to a piece of criticism or a sudden change of plans. Can you recall the heat of that immediate emotion? Now consider how the entire situation might have unfolded differently if you had granted yourself just 10 seconds of pure silence, a conscious space to question your first judgment before any words were spoken or actions were taken. That space is your proherses in action. It is the difference between being a slave to your first impression and becoming the master of your response. Trying to swim against a powerful current will only leave you exhausted and further from your goal. Stoicism teaches a more intelligent way forward, to stop fighting the flow and instead use its momentum to navigate toward your destination. This is the art of Stoic acceptance, a conscious alignment with the natural order of events. It is the profound understanding that resistance to what is already true is the single greatest drain on your energy and focus. The early Stoics, founders like Zeno and Cleans, called this living in accordance with nature. They saw the universe as governed by a rational principle, a logos, a current of divine reason. To live in accordance with this nature meant to accept its flow, to see every event, even the difficult ones, as part of a coherent and purposeful whole. Your job is not to curse the river for its direction, but to learn how to steer within it. This is the opposite of defeatism. Passive resignation gives up and drowns. Stoic acceptance actively assesses the current, accepts its power, and then uses all your skill to swim with purpose. You are not surrendering your agency, you are redirecting it from a futile struggle into effective, intelligent action. History offers a clear lesson from the world of commerce. Imagine a powerful trading empire whose wealth is built on a single, dominant sea route. Then, a shift in climate or politics renders that route unstable and unprofitable. One response is to fight reality. They could pour their entire treasury into military campaigns to force the route open, a desperate and exhausting battle against the inevitable. The Stoic response, however, is to accept the new reality with clear eyes. The old route is gone. What new currents are emerging? Perhaps overland paths are now more viable, or new trading partners are rising in a different region. By accepting the change they could not control, this empire conserves all its resources. It redirects its ships, retrains its merchants, and adapts its economy. It swims with the new current and in doing so discovers routes to even greater prosperity. The obstacle, the closed route, became the very reason for a more resilient and diversified economic network. Now bring this principle into your own life. Identify one single aspect you are currently resisting. It might be a technological change at work that frustrates you, or a shift in a personal relationship you wish was different. What would it look like to stop swimming against this current? It does not mean you approve of the situation. It means you stop wasting energy fighting its existence. You accept it as the new starting point. From that place of clear-eyed acceptance, you can then ask the strategic question, given this new reality, what is the most intelligent and virtuous move I can make? The energy you save from resisting will be the very fuel that propels you forward. What truly separates a mere ruler from a great leader when everything falls apart? Stoic philosophy offers a clear and demanding answer, the ideal of the philosopher king. This is not a leader who simply gives orders, but one who embodies a profound inner governance, a ruler who commands themselves before commanding others. The Stoic leader is defined by the four cardinal virtues: wisdom to see the true nature of a situation, courage to act rightly in the face of fear, justice to ensure fairness for all, and temperance to exercise restraint and discipline. These are not abstract ideals, but the daily operating system for someone who understands that their primary duty is to serve. Marcus Aurelius left us the ultimate manual for this role in his private journal, Meditations. He was not writing for publication, but engaged in a relentless conversation with himself, a series of stern reminders and gentle encouragements to live up to the Stoic ideal. He wrote that you must be like a rocky promontory against which the waves constantly break. It stands firm, and around it the seething waters are laid to rest. This is the image of the Stoic leader, an unshakable point of calm and reason in the middle of a storm. We can see this philosophy tested in the fires of his own reign. During the Marcomannic Wars, as Germanic tribes pressed against the empire's borders, and simultaneously as a devastating plague wiped out a significant portion of the population, Marcus did not retreat into luxury or despair. He displayed self-mastery by accepting the dual crises without complaint. He focused on his duty, personally leading military campaigns for years on end along the Danube frontier. He made decisions based on justice, ensuring that the burdens of war and disease were borne as fairly as possible, rather than protecting only the elite. His resilience was not the absence of feeling, but the product of a mind rigorously trained to filter every event through the lens of virtue, not emotion or ego. Think of a leader you personally admire, whether from history, your community, or your workplace. Look closely at their actions during a difficult time. Do you see the mark of Stoic virtue in their conduct? perhaps it was the wisdom to listen to opposing viewpoints, the courage to make an unpopular but necessary decision, the justice of considering the impact on the most vulnerable, or the temperance to control their own pride or anger. Recognizing these qualities in others helps us define the blueprint for our own leadership in any role we happen to hold. The Stoics did not see walls, they saw stepping stones. Every barrier, every setback, every piece of resistance was not a final stop but a training ground for the soul. This mindset is the ultimate reframe, turning adversity from something that happens to you into something that happens for your development. The obstacle itself becomes the very material you need to build a stronger character. When you encounter a difficulty, the Stoic asks a radically different question. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" they ask, "What quality can this situation help me cultivate?" A moment for patience, a challenge for courage, a loss for resilience. This is how you transform poison into medicine. Marcus Aurelius captured this alchemy in a single, unforgettable line. He wrote, "The impediment to action advances action." What stands in the way becomes the way. Read that again. What stands in the way becomes the way. The thing blocking your path is not a detour from your journey, it is the path itself. Your progress is measured by how skillfully you use it. Think of an ancient city that has just repelled a brutal siege. Its outer walls are shattered, piles of stone and rubble litter the streets. One response is to see only the destruction, the cost, the failure of their old defenses. But a city guided by the Stoic reframe sees something else entirely. They look at that rubble and see raw material. They do not simply haul it away, they use it. They grind the stone to mix stronger mortar. They redesign the walls with the lessons learned from the attack, making them thicker and smarter. They use the cleared space to create new, hidden traps for the next aggressor. The very thing that sought to destroy them, the siege itself, becomes the reason their next defenses are utterly impregnable. The obstacle became the way. Now, bring this principle down to the scale of your own life. Identify one single obstacle you are facing right now. It could be a difficult project, a strained relationship, or a personal limitation. Now perform the Stoic reframe. Do not just endure it, interrogate it. How can this exact situation serve as your training ground? If it is testing your patience, then your task is to practice calm. If it is demanding a new skill, then your challenge is to embrace learning. This obstacle is not blocking your path to growth, it is the only path. What new strength will you forge from the rubble of this challenge? When resources shrink and fear spreads, the immediate temptation is to hoard, to cheat, to secure your own survival at any cost. Yet the Stoics identified this exact moment as the most critical for practicing the virtue of justice, for they understood that injustice does not solve a crisis. It merely accelerates the internal collapse that makes recovery impossible. Stoic justice is far more than a legal concept. It is a profound commitment to fairness, to kindness, and to the fundamental recognition that every other person is a rational being worthy of basic respect and consideration. This virtue acts as the social glue that holds a community together when external pressures threaten to tear it apart. The philosopher Seneca powerfully framed this duty by describing our social bonds as a series of concentric circles. The innermost circle is your own mind, then your immediate family, followed by your local community, your country, and finally, the entire human race. He argued that our moral task is to draw these circles inward, to treat the stranger with the same consideration we would offer our own kin, especially when times are hardest. This is not sentimental idealism, it is a practical survival strategy. History provides a stark example during a prolonged famine that struck an ancient city-state. As food stores dwindled, panic began to set in. the ruling council, fearing riots, could have imposed harsh martial law, seizing all remaining grain for the army and the political elite. This would have been the predictable, selfish response. Instead, a leader steeped in Stoic principles decreed a different path. He ordered a public and transparent rationing system, ensuring that every citizen, from the wealthiest merchant to the poorest laborer, received an equal and sustainable share. He and his own family took their portion from the same public stores. This act of visible fairness, this embodiment of Stoic justice, did more than just distribute calories. It distributed trust. It transformed a terrified mob into a cohesive community united by a shared struggle. The people saw that their leaders were suffering alongside them, that the burden was shared justly, and this shared respect prevented the civil unrest that would have doomed the city far faster than hunger ever could. The crisis was managed not by force but by fidelity to a principle. So in your own life, under the daily pressures of deadlines and demands, ask yourself this simple but profound question. Are your interactions, especially the difficult ones, guided by a quiet sense of fairness and a genuine respect for the person in front of you? When you are cut off in traffic, when a colleague makes a costly mistake, when you feel the urge to put your own needs unquestionably first, that is your moment to practice Stoic justice. It is the quiet, daily choice to draw those circles inward, building a personal character and a wider community that can withstand any storm. A mind scattered across time is a mind robbed of its power. The Stoics understood that our greatest strength emerges only when we gather our attention into the single, decisive point of the present moment. This is not a passive state of being, but an active discipline of focus, a form of mindfulness that anchors your reason and will in the only realm where they can actually operate. The past is already written and the future remains a cloud of possibilities, but the present moment is your sole arena of action. It is the only place where you can truly think, choose, and act with any effect. The philosopher Seneca put his finger on the source of our deepest anxieties when he observed that we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Our minds spin elaborate tales of future disasters or endlessly replay past mistakes, creating a phantom pain that can be more debilitating than any actual event. This mental time travel drains the energy you need for the task directly in front of you. Consider a master artisan restoring a priceless, ancient artifact. A single slip of the tool could mean irreversible damage. In that high-stakes moment, the artisan cannot afford to be distracted by thoughts of the museum director's potential disapproval or by regretting a minor imperfection from an hour ago. Their entire world must contract to the delicate feel of the tool in their hand, the precise angle of the blade, the minute texture of the material under the light. That total absorption in the present task is what allows for flawless execution. It is the same focused clarity a surgeon needs during a complex procedure, or a leader requires when making a critical decision with limited information. The crisis demands not that you solve every problem at once, but that you address the single, most immediate step with your full capacity. So for your next activity, no matter how ordinary, make it a practice in Stoic mindfulness. Whether you are drafting an email, washing a dish, or having a conversation, deliberately pull your attention away from the ghosts of yesterday and the worries of tomorrow. Pour all of your awareness into that one action. Notice how the clutter in your mind begins to settle, how your decisions feel more deliberate, and how a quiet calm replaces the background noise of anxiety. A crumbling empire is often hollowed out from within long before its walls are breached. The relentless pursuit of more, the insatiable hunger for luxury and spectacle, drains its strength until it has nothing left for a true fight. This is why the Stoics championed the virtue of temperance, viewing self-control not as a form of deprivation, but as a profound source of power. Temperance is the discipline of restraint, the conscious choice to moderate your desires, your consumption, and your emotional reactions. It ensures that your most vital resources, from your physical energy to your mental focus, are not squandered on fleeting pleasures or non-essentials, but are conserved for the battles that truly matter. The Stoic teacher Musonius Rufus put it bluntly, arguing that mastery over one's appetites and desires is the very foundation of a good life. He saw that a person who is a slave to their cravings for food, comfort, or recognition has already lost their freedom, no matter how wealthy or powerful they appear. This internal discipline creates a reserve of strength that external circumstances cannot touch. Consider the ultimate test of a city under siege. The attackers surround the walls, confident that hunger and thirst will soon force a surrender. Inside, panic is the natural first response, but a leader trained in Stoic temperance imposes a different reality. They do not allow the wealthiest citizens to hoard the remaining grain. They do not let fear dictate the consumption of the water supply. Instead, they implement a strict, fair rationing system. Every loaf of bread, every cup of water is accounted for and distributed with disciplined moderation. This is not an act of cruelty, but of profound strategic wisdom. By restraining immediate desires, by saying no to the impulse to eat today without thought for tomorrow, the city conserves its most precious resource, time. They stretch their supplies, outlasting the patience and resources of the besieging army. Their discipline becomes their strongest weapon, turning their restraint into resilience. The attackers, operating on the assumption of a quick victory, grow frustrated and weary, while the defenders, fortified by their self-control, grow stronger in their unity and purpose. Where in your own life could a similar strategy of restraint create a reservoir of strength? Identify one single area where a lack of moderation is quietly draining your resources. Perhaps it is the endless scroll through social media consuming time you intended for deep work, or the habitual online purchases that drain financial reserves needed for a larger goal. What if you imposed a conscious ration on that activity? The energy, time, or money you save through that single act of temperance is not lost. It is reinvested, becoming the very resource that allows you to endure your own personal sieges and emerge not just intact but stronger. You can lose your kingdom, your wealth, your health, but a Stoic knows there is one thing that remains forever yours. This is your inner freedom, the inviolable sovereignty over your own mind and character. It is the ultimate empire, a territory no external power can ever truly conquer or confiscate. This realization is the final transformation Stoicism offers, a shift from seeking power over the world to claiming absolute authority over your own judgments and responses. This inner sovereignty is the source of an unshakable peace and dignity, a state of being that makes you, in a profound sense, invincible. No defeat, no imprisonment, no loss can strip you of this final fortress. The philosopher Epictetus, who knew the deepest form of external bondage as a slave, framed this truth with absolute clarity. He taught that what is truly yours is your faculty of choice, your ability to use impressions rightly. Your body is not yours, it is a mere assembly of clay. Your possessions are not yours, they are temporary lodgings, but your will, your intention, your character, these are your sacred and permanent property. He famously stated that chains are only binding for the leg, but they cannot shackle your will unless you yourself permit it. This is the core of Stoic invincibility, a freedom that exists not in the absence of constraints, but in the power to choose your stance within them. History offers a moving example in the Roman statesman Seneca. Though he served as an advisor to the Emperor Nero, he ultimately fell out of favor and was ordered to take his own life. In his final hours, surrounded by grieving friends and family, Seneca did not rage against the injustice or beg for mercy. He accepted the sentence with calm composure. He comforted those weeping around him, asking them where their philosophy had gone, where was their resolve against impending misfortunes. He chose to meet his end with the same reasoned dignity he had advocated in his writings. In that moment, he was stripped of everything, his political power, his vast wealth, even his physical life. But his inner freedom, his command over his own character in the face of terror, remained utterly intact. He demonstrated that the ultimate victory is not in avoiding death, but in meeting it as a free person. So what does this inner freedom mean for you in the flow of an ordinary day? It is the quiet space between a triggering event and your chosen response. It is the power to pause when criticized and not react with defensiveness. It is the ability to face a professional setback without letting it define your self-worth. How can you exercise this sovereignty more fully today? Identify one small situation where you typically feel your buttons are pushed, where you react on autopilot. In that moment, consciously reclaim your inner throne. Remember that your character, your integrity, and your judgment are the only true possessions you have. Everything else is just visiting. A secret weapon of Stoic commanders was their ability to freeze time inside their own minds. In the breath between receiving shocking news and issuing a command, they engaged a profound internal mechanism. This is the practice of withholding assent, the deliberate refusal to immediately accept your first, raw emotional impression of an event as the absolute truth. Epictetus defined this as the very essence of our power, stating that our faculty of choice is our capacity to work with our impressions. He taught that when any disturbing thought strikes you, the first step is to say to it, "You are just an impression, and not necessarily the thing you claim to be." Then examine it, test it. This pause is where the three core Stoic disciplines come alive. You apply the discipline of assent to question if the impression is accurate. You use the discipline of desire to align your reaction with virtue, not vengeance, and you enact the discipline of action to choose a response that serves the common good. Imagine a provincial governor receiving a frantic message that a trusted ally is secretly plotting against him. The initial impression is one of white-hot betrayal. The raw impulse, the immediate assent to that impression, would be to dispatch guards to arrest the alleged traitor at once. But a leader trained in this pause does something different. He takes that single, vital breath. He withholds his assent from the accusation. He tells himself, this is just an impression. It may be true, it may be false. He then engages his reason. What is the evidence? Is the source reliable? What would a just investigation reveal? By pausing, he avoids a potentially catastrophic mistake, acting on a rumor that could shatter the trust holding his entire region together. His restraint, born from that frozen moment of judgment, prevents a cycle of paranoia and violence. Tomorrow, you can practice this on a small scale. The next time you feel a flash of irritation, perhaps from a curt email or an interrupted conversation, insert a deliberate 3-second pause before you speak or type a single word. In that brief silence, reclaim your faculty of choice. Ask yourself, is my initial reaction true, and is it helpful? That tiny gap is the training ground for a mind that crisis cannot command. Hollywood portrays courage as a roaring fire of emotion, but the Stoics saw it as a quiet, unshakable pillar of reason. True courage is not the absence of fear, but the unwavering commitment to act rightly in spite of it. This is not a feeling, but a judgment, a deliberate choice to prioritize virtue over comfort, duty over safety. For the Stoic, courage is a form of wisdom. It is the clear-eyed assessment of a situation, the ability to distinguish between a genuine threat to your character and a mere threat to your comfort or pride. It is the strength to endure necessary hardship for a greater good, knowing that some things are far worse than physical danger, such as the loss of your integrity. Seneca captured this perfectly when he wrote that the wise man is not fearless, but he is free from anxiety because he has reckoned with all possibilities beforehand. He has practiced the premeditation of evils, and so when a frightening event occurs, he meets it not with shock, but with a rational plan. Imagine a leader standing before a crowd gripped by panic, perhaps during a citywide blackout or a sudden storm. The emotional Hollywood response might be to shout orders or make grand promises. The Stoic leader, however, draws upon courage as wisdom. They assess the real dangers, not the imagined ones. They speak calmly, using reason to dispel unfounded rumors. They outline the practical steps being taken, focusing the crowd's energy on orderly, collective action rather than selfish panic. Their courage is not in being unafraid, but in choosing to serve the common good even while fear whispers in their own ear. So what fear currently holds you back from a necessary action? Is it the fear of a difficult conversation or the risk of pursuing a meaningful goal? Take a moment and write down a simple, rational argument against that fear. What is the virtue at stake here, the courage, justice, or integrity that your action would uphold? And what is the actual, probable worst-case scenario, stripped of your emotional amplification? This written exercise transforms a swirling anxiety into a manageable problem, allowing your reason to guide your actions where your emotions once ruled. The most resilient empires understood their walls were imaginary lines on a map, not barriers to a shared human destiny. They saw themselves as part of a single, living organism, a concept the Stoics called Cosmopolitanism. This was the radical idea that you are not merely a citizen of Rome or Athens, but a citizen of the entire world. Your primary allegiance is not to a single tribe or state, but to the whole of humanity, bound together by our common possession of reason. This worldview transforms how you perceive others, especially in a crisis. A rival is no longer just an enemy to be crushed, but a fellow rational being who may become an ally. Empathy becomes a strategic asset, and cooperation is the logical path to mutual survival. Marcus Aurelius captured this interconnectedness with a beautiful biological analogy. He wrote in his private meditations, "What is not good for the swarm is not good for the bee. You cannot thrive if the hive is sick. Your personal well-being is inextricably linked to the health of the whole community, and by extension, the whole human race." To act against the common good is to act against your own deepest interest. History offers a powerful, though often overlooked, example. Picture two rival city-states locked in a bitter trade war for generations. Then, a catastrophic earthquake levels the primary city of one rival, leaving its people homeless and vulnerable. The predictable, short-sighted move for the other state would be to press its advantage, perhaps even launching an invasion to finish off their weakened competitor. But a leader guided by Stoic cosmopolitanism sees a different path. They look past the old grievances and see a swarm in distress. They dispatch ships laden with food, engineers, and medical supplies. This is not naive charity, it is a profound act of enlightened self-interest. By helping their rival recover, they prevent the chaos and refugee crisis that would inevitably spill across their own borders. They build a bridge of trust where there was only a wall of suspicion, forging a future alliance that makes both states far stronger than they ever were as isolated adversaries. The immediate crisis of the earthquake became the very event that ended a generations-long conflict. Where in your own life have you drawn a hard line between us and them? It might be a rivalry with another department at work, or a lingering family disagreement. How could softening that boundary and acting as if you are part of the same larger swarm transform that conflict from a drain on your energy into a source of unexpected strength? An empire does not wait for the siege to begin before it starts training its soldiers. It drills them relentlessly during times of peace, forging discipline and strength long before the first enemy appears on the horizon. The Stoic mind is built on this exact same principle. Resilience is not a magical quality you are born with. It is a fortress you construct brick by brick through daily, deliberate practice. The Stoics were not merely thinkers, they were mental athletes who trained for hardship so that when it arrived, their response would be automatic, grounded in virtue and reason. This training took many forms, all designed to strengthen the mind against the seduction of comfort and the shock of misfortune. One powerful method was voluntary discomfort. The philosopher Seneca, a man of immense wealth, actively practiced this. In his letters, he advised setting aside a certain number of days each month to live on the cheapest food, wear your roughest clothes, and ask yourself if this is really the condition you so often fear. He was preparing for poverty while still rich, not because he expected to lose his money, but to prove to himself that he could thrive without it. This practice dismantles fear by making the unfamiliar familiar. It teaches you that your well-being is not dependent on external luxuries, but on your own unshakable character. The ancient Roman elite, even those in positions of great power, often engaged in this kind of training. They would take cold baths not for pleasure, but to harden their bodies and wills against discomfort. They would periodically embrace simple living, stepping away from their lavish villas to remind themselves that they needed very little to be content. This was not self-punishment, it was a strategic investment in their own inner freedom. Another cornerstone of this preparation was the regular meditation on mortality, contemplating the brevity of life not to breed morbidity, but to instill a fierce urgency and gratitude for the present moment. By rehearsing the loss of everything, you come to cherish what you have without clinging to it desperately. The training also happened in the smallest of daily actions. It was the practice of patience in a frustrating line, the exercise of courage in speaking a difficult truth, the application of justice in a minor dispute. Every day presents 1,000 tiny opportunities to rehearse the virtues you would need in a major crisis. So what would it look like for you to begin this training? Choose one single Stoic exercise to try for the next week. It could be as simple as starting your day with a 1-minute cold shower, consciously embracing the discomfort to build your resolve. Or it could be choosing one meal to eat with absolute simplicity, without distraction, reflecting on the nourishment itself. This small, consistent practice is how you move philosophy from the pages of a book into the very fiber of your being, building an army within your mind that is always ready for the battles life will bring. Why do we suffer in the raw moments of crisis? This question echoes with a desperate need for meaning. The Stoics offered a profound and stabilizing answer, a trust in a rational and providential universe they called the Logos. This was not a plea to ignore pain, but an invitation to see it within a vast, coherent, and benevolent whole. They observed an undeniable order in the turning of the seasons, the predictable paths of the stars, and the intricate balance of nature. From this, they concluded that the cosmos itself is guided by a divine reason, a purposeful intelligence weaving every event, even the difficult ones, into a perfect tapestry. The Stoic philosopher Cleans wrote a beautiful hymn to this cosmic force, praising Zeus for steering all things with your law, and the universe is willingly led by you. This perspective transforms chaos into a hidden order. It is the difference between seeing a single, tragic thread and trusting the master weaver who is creating a magnificent, interconnected design. Consider a farmer whose entire crop is lost to a severe drought. The immediate reality is devastating. In his grief, he could curse the skies and abandon his land. But a farmer who lives in accordance with the logos sees the drought differently. He accepts it as part of the natural cycle he cannot control. He trusts that the barren field is not a punishment, but a necessary period of rest and renewal for the soil. This trust does not remove the hardship, but it fuels his resilience. He uses the time to repair his tools, improve his irrigation channels, and plan for the next planting season with greater wisdom. His suffering is real, but it is not meaningless. It becomes a difficult lesson woven into the larger story of his life and his land, a story he trusts is ultimately good. Can you recall a painful event from your own past, one that felt utterly senseless when you were in the middle of it? With the clarity of time, can you now see how it shaped you, perhaps closing one door to force you toward a better path, or revealing a strength you never knew you possessed? That hidden purpose, that subtle redirection, is a small glimpse of the logos at work in your own life. A deep lake remains undisturbed by storms on its surface. This is the image of Stoic equanimity, the unshakable inner calm that is the ultimate reward for practicing these principles. It is not a blank, emotionless state, but a profound and steady balance, a mind anchored in reason whether facing great fortune or absolute disaster. This equanimity is the synthesized result of every strategy we have explored, from the dichotomy of control to the premeditation of evils. It becomes your default state, a rational peace that external chaos cannot shatter. The ancient Stoics held up the ideal of the sage, a person who has achieved this perfect tranquility. While they admitted this was a nearly impossible standard for any human to fully reach, it was the star they navigated by, the constant goal that gave direction to their daily efforts. Epictetus described this ideal beautifully, stating that while you may not yet be a Socrates, you can still live as someone who wishes to be like Socrates. The point is not perfection, but the unwavering direction of your journey. Picture a lighthouse keeper in the midst of a hurricane. The wind screams, the waves crash against the rocks, the entire structure shudders. Yet inside, the keeper remains calm. He cannot stop the storm, but he can keep the lamp lit. He methodically trims the wick, polishes the glass, and ensures the beacon continues to turn, guiding ships through the very chaos that surrounds him. His equanimity does not mean he is unaware of the danger. It means his duty and his focus are untouchable. His calm is an active force, a purposeful stability that serves a greater good. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being easily shaken by every small inconvenience and 10 being that lighthouse keeper in a hurricane, how would you honestly rate your own level of equanimity this week? Now look back over the Stoic strategies you have just learned. Identify just one single practice, whether it is the morning pause to sort your concerns or the nightly reflection on your actions, that you could commit to for the next 7 days. This one practice is your first step toward polishing the glass of your own mind, building a calm so deep that no surface storm can ever extinguish your inner light. Most of our suffering begins not with events, but with the cravings of our own hearts. We are taught to chase success, admiration, and comfort, yet the relentless pursuit of these external prizes is the very engine of our anxiety and disappointment. Stoicism offers a radical course correction for our desires, a mental retraining known as the discipline of desire. This is the practice of consciously aligning your deepest wants with what is truly good, which for the Stoics means a life of virtue, and releasing your frantic grip on everything else. It is about wanting the right things, not just more things. The philosopher Epictetus, who understood the chains of wanting better than most, gave us the key. He taught that freedom is not secured by satisfying your desires, but by destroying them. True liberty comes from wanting only what is already within your power to have, which is your own moral character and your reasoned choice. Imagine a provincial governor in a border region, a place rife with corruption and constant political intrigue. This leader has deeply internalized the discipline of desire. He does not crave the approval of the Roman Senate, nor does he fear the threats of local warlords. His single, focused desire is to rule with justice and wisdom. When a powerful merchant offers him a vast bribe to overlook an unjust tax, the governor feels no inner conflict. The money is simply irrelevant to his core desire. When a rival threatens his reputation with slander, he remains unmoved, for his goal was never public acclaim, but a clear conscience. Because his desires are aligned solely with virtue, he cannot be manipulated by greed or fear. His governance becomes a pillar of stability, not because he is powerful, but because he is incorruptible. His wants are so perfectly aligned with his duty that external pressures simply glance off him. Now take a quiet moment and bring to mind 3 things you strongly desire. Write them down. Perhaps it is a specific promotion, a certain level of income, or the admiration of a particular person. Now look at each one and ask 2 simple but profound questions. Is this outcome entirely within my control? And is my pursuit of it aligned with the virtues of wisdom, courage, and justice? This honest audit of your desires is the first, most practical step toward a freedom that no circumstance can ever take from you. Philosophy that stays in lecture halls is useless during a siege. The Stoics treated their principles not as intellectual ornaments, but as a field manual for survival. Every concept we have explored, from the Dichotomy of Control to the Premeditation of Evils, was designed for one purpose alone: to be put into immediate practice. This was a philosophy of action, forged in the real world of political turmoil, military campaigns, and personal loss. The Stoic teacher Musonius Rufus was unequivocal on this point, declaring that philosophy is simply the practice of how to live well, and if it does not heal human suffering, it is as useless as a doctor who cannot cure the sick. The value of a Stoic idea is measured solely by its power to change your behavior when the pressure is on. Consider the immense task of rebuilding a city's vital infrastructure after a catastrophic earthquake. The initial shock and despair are overwhelming. An engineer guided by abstract theory might be paralyzed by the scale of the destruction, but an engineer trained in Stoic pragmatism immediately applies the tools. They accept the reality of the rubble, the first principle of Amor Fati. They focus their energy exclusively on the design and materials within their control, the dichotomy of action. They use the premeditation of evils, having mentally rehearsed such a disaster, to calmly execute a pre-considered recovery plan. Their resilience is not a feeling, but a series of calculated, effective steps to restore water, power, and stability. The philosophy manifests in the blueprints, the construction schedules, and the rebuilt bridges. It proves its worth not in a book, but in the restored lives of the citizens. Your own life presents a smaller, yet equally real, proving ground. Look back over the Stoic strategies you have just learned. Choose just one single principle from this video, perhaps the practice of pausing before you react or the mental sorting of what is within your control. Now make a concrete commitment. How will you actively apply this principle within the next 48 hours? Will you use that pause during a frustrating conversation at work? Will you mentally sort your worries during your morning commute? This specific, tangible application is the only way the philosophy stops being a theory and starts becoming your own source of unshakable strength. The empires that survived were not always the strongest, but often the most philosophically resilient. While their neighbors collapsed under the weight of plague and invasion, Rome endured for centuries in part because a core of its leaders applied a Stoic operating system to governance. This was not an abstract preference, it directly shaped policy and military strategy in moments of absolute crisis. We see this in Marcus Aurelius personally leading legions on the frontier while simultaneously managing a devastating pandemic. His decisions filtered through a lens of duty and justice rather than personal fear. We see it in the Stoic-inspired concept of natural law, which argued that certain just principles apply to all people, slave or free, thereby strengthening the social fabric of the entire empire. The practical value of this mindset is best captured by the emperor himself, who wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." This is the ultimate summation, a call to stop debating and start doing, to embody the virtues of wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance in your every action. The historical examples are clear, from the general who paused to question his first impression of betrayal, to the city that used disciplined rationing to outlast a siege, to the leader who saw service to the community as his highest purpose. So look now at the personal empire you are building, whether it is your career, your family, or your local community. Where are the cracks in your walls? What single Stoic strategy, practiced consistently, could transform that vulnerability into your greatest source of strength, turning your own looming crises into the very material for an unshakable legacy? A resilient empire begins with a resilient mind. Throughout history, the Stoic strategies of virtue, control, and acceptance provided more than just personal comfort. They built an unshakable framework for entire civilizations to navigate absolute collapse. The central operating principle was a radical shift in focus from external power to internal virtue, the one true good. This was reinforced by the daily practice of the dichotomy of control, sorting every challenge into what is up to us and what is not, conserving energy for effective action. Leaders like Marcus Aurelius embodied Amor Fati, loving their fate and using every obstacle as the raw material for growth. They built an inner citadel through premeditation, viewing crises from a higher perspective and channeling their resilience into service for the common good. The most powerful empires were those whose leaders understood that the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Your own modern challenges, from professional pressures to personal struggles, are your own empire to govern. The same principles that steadied Rome can steady you. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. So, of all the Stoic practices we explored, which single strategy resonated most deeply with you? Was it the mental pause before reacting, the loving acceptance of a difficult situation, or the focus on your inner circle of control? Share the one practice you will carry forward in the comments below, and join our community exploring practical wisdom. If this journey into Stoic resilience was valuable for you, subscribe for more guides on building an unshakable mind.